This was about 4 years ago. I was 24, freshly out of college with a communications degree that wasn't doing much for me, and I'd taken a job as a night auditor at a mid-sized hotel in a suburb outside of Pittsburgh. Not a dump, but not a nice place either. The kind of hotel that hosts regional sales conferences and airport layovers. 3 floors, 87 rooms, an indoor pool that smelled like chemicals, and a lobby that felt smaller at night than it did during the day. The shift was 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. I was alone the entire time. No bellhop, no manager on duty. Just me behind the front desk in a back office the size of a closet. My job was to run the financial reports, handle any late check-ins, and answer the phone. Most nights, nothing happened. I'd finish the audit by 2 a.m. and spend the rest of the shift watching videos on my phone. It was the loneliest job I ever had, but it was easy. And easy felt like enough at the time. The night I'm talking about was a Tuesday in late November. The hotel was maybe at 30% occupancy, which was normal for a weekday that late in the year. I clocked in, got the handoff from the evening auditor, and settled in. By midnight, the lobby was empty and the phones had gone quiet. At 1:15, the elevator dinged. I looked up expecting a guest coming down for ice or a vending machine run. The doors opened. Nobody there. I watched the empty elevator for a second, then looked back down at my screen. Old buildings do that. Elevators get called to floors by mistake or the buttons stick. I didn't think anything of it. 15 minutes later, it dinged again. Same thing. Empty car. Doors open. Doors close. I checked the panel behind the desk that shows which floor the elevator is on. It read 2. Then, while I was watching it, it changed to 3, then back to 2. Like it was being called back and forth between floors. I called up to the 3rd floor on the house phone. The hotel had dedicated floor hallway phones. No answer. I tried the 2nd floor. Nothing. It wasn't unusual for guests not to answer, but something about the rhythm of it, the repetition, made my stomach feel hollow. I walked to the elevator and rode it to the 2nd floor. The hallway was empty and perfectly still. I stood there and listened for probably 30 seconds. The ice machine hummed at the far end of the corridor. A television murmured behind one of the room doors. Normal sounds. I rode back down and told myself to stop looking for problems. By 2:45, I'd finished the audit and was starting to feel the familiar drag of the overnight shift. I made a cup of coffee in the back office and sat down with it. That's when I noticed the camera feeds on the monitor in the corner. We had 8 cameras: lobby, parking lot, both stairwells, the pool, the breakfast area, the 2nd floor hallway, and the 3rd floor hallway. I glanced at them dozens of times that night without seeing anything. But this time, on the 3rd floor feed, I thought I saw something. A shape maybe, near the far end of the hall. I leaned in. The resolution wasn't great, and the hallway lighting at night was reduced to save energy, leaving everything in that same flat gray-yellow wash I'd stopped noticing months ago. I stared at the feed for a long time. The shape didn't move. I convinced myself it was a luggage cart someone had left out, or maybe a shadow from the exit sign. I looked away. When I looked back 2 minutes later, it was closer. Not dramatically closer, maybe 10 feet, but I was certain. I had been staring at that screen long enough to know where the shape had been, and now it was somewhere else. I sat completely still and watched the feed for the next 4 minutes without blinking. The shape didn't move again, but it was there, maybe halfway down the hall now, and the longer I stared at it, the less it looked like a luggage cart. It looked like a person, standing very, very still. I picked up the phone and called the 3rd floor. The phone rang 11 times. I called the front office line from my cell simultaneously, just to make sure the system was working. It rang immediately. The 3rd floor line kept going. Nobody picked up. I thought about calling my manager. I genuinely did, but I had nothing concrete to tell him. A shape on a camera, an elevator moving by itself. I'd been working there long enough to know how that conversation would go. And I didn't want to be the new kid who panicked over shadows. So I grabbed my master key card and took the stairwell up to 3. The hallway was empty. No luggage cart, no guest standing in the hall. Nothing at all except closed doors and that flat, humming silence. I walked the full length of the corridor twice, trying door handles out of instinct even though I knew I had no reason to enter a room. All locked, all quiet. I went back to the stairwell. That's when I heard it. Somewhere below me, in the stairwell itself, there were footsteps. Slow, deliberate, one flight down. I froze on the landing and listened. They stopped. I stood there for probably 2 minutes, not moving, barely breathing, listening to a silence that felt occupied. I took the elevator back down. The lobby was exactly as I left it. Coffee on the desk, audit printouts. My phone face up next to the keyboard. Nothing disturbed. I sat back down and watched the camera feed for the rest of the shift without looking away for more than a few minutes at a time. The third-floor hallway stayed empty. The elevator stayed on the ground floor. At 6 a.m., the parking lot camera picked up the first delivery truck of the morning. Something in my chest finally loosened. I told the morning manager what had happened. She walked the floors, checked the stairwells, reviewed the camera footage. She couldn't find anything on the recording that matched what I described on the third-floor feed. Not the shape, not the movement, nothing. She said the cameras sometimes glitch with low light settings. Maybe. I've thought about it a lot over the years, and I keep coming back to the same questions I can't answer. If it was a glitch, what were the footsteps? If it was a guest, why did no one ever come to the desk, or answer the phone, or appear on any of the other cameras at any point during that shift? And if it was nothing, if all of it was fatigue and bad lighting in an old building doing old building things, then why, 4 years later, does the memory of standing in that stairwell still make it hard to breathe? I quit 3 weeks after that night. I told myself it was for a better opportunity. I'd already stopped believing that by the time I handed in my key card.